The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Episode 3. Narrated by Wormhole Podcast. Chapter 4. Adaptation. On a sunny Sunday morning, while church bells rang in the villages along the shore, Gatsby's house came alive again. It sparkled and twinkled on his lawn, filled with guests who had returned for another extravagant party. "He's a bootlegger," some young ladies joked, flitting between cocktails and flowers. "One time he killed a man who discovered he was related to von Hindenburg and the devil," one girl giggled, reaching for a rose. "Pour me another drink, honey." I wrote down the names of all the visitors who came to Gatsby's house that summer. It was an old timetable, faded and crumbling, titled, "This schedule in effect July 5th, 1922. But I can still read those names. They show you more than I could explain about the people who graced Gatsby's hospitality and the strange tribute of ignorance they paid him. From East Egg came the Beckers, the Leaches, and a man named Bunsen from Yale. There were the Hornbeams, the Voltaires, and a whole bunch called the Blackbucks who always gathered in a corner, flipping their noses at anyone who got too close. Then the Ismays and the Christies, Edgar Beaver, whose hair turned cotton white one winter for no reason at all. Clarence Endive showed up from East Egg once, in white knickerbockers, and started a fight with a bum named Eddie. From farther out on the island came the Cheadles, the Schraders, and various other characters, some of whom had wild stories. Like Snell, who got so drunk that he ended up at the penitentiary after Mrs. Sweat's car ran over his hand. The Poles, the Mulreadys, senators, and a whole group related to movies came from West Egg. And there was a man named Klipspringer, who visited so often he became known as the Boarder. He had no other home. One day in July, Gatsby's stunning car pulled up to my house. It made a burst of melody with its horn. It was the first time he had come to see me, even though I had been to 2 of his parties and spent time on his beach. "Good morning, old sport," he greeted me, balancing on the dashboard. "You're having lunch with me today. Let's ride up together." I noticed his movements were full of that unique American energy, always restless. I admired his car, a rich cream color, gleaming with nickel and equipped with all sorts of luxurious features. We drove off towards the city. I had spoken with Gatsby a handful of times, and my initial impression of him as an important man had faded. He had become merely the owner of an elaborate party house, not much more. Then, during the drive, Gatsby suddenly asked, "What's your opinion of me anyhow?" I was caught off guard and stumbled through a vague answer. "I want to tell you about my life," he interjected. "I don't want you to get a wrong idea of me from all those stories." He then shared, "I am the son of wealthy people from the Midwest, all dead now. I was educated at Oxford because it's a family tradition." The way he hurried through "educated at Oxford" made me wonder if he was lying. "From what part of the Midwest?" I asked casually. "San Francisco," he replied, his tone solemn. He said he had inherited a lot of money and lived like royalty in Europe, collecting gems and hunting big game to forget something sad from his past. I struggled to hold back my laughter. His story sounded like worn-out cliches, like a character from a bad movie. "Then I served in the war," he continued, "and I tried very hard to die, but it never happened. I ended up leading a small unit in a major battle. He had been decorated by several countries, even little Montenegro. He showed me a medal from Montenegro with his name engraved on it. It looked real. Then he pulled out a photograph of himself with some young men during his Oxford days. So it was all true. I pictured him surrounded by tigers and jewels, easing his broken heart with their beauty. "I need to ask you a favor today," he said, "but I thought you should know something about me first. I don't want you to think I'm nobody." I was unsure why he was telling me all this, but he wouldn't say anything more. He only mentioned that he had learned I was taking Miss Baker to tea. "Do you mean you're in love with Miss Baker?" I asked. "No, old sport," he replied quickly, "but she's kindly agreed to speak to you about this matter." I had no clue what he meant by this matter, but I felt uneasy. As we approached the city, Gatsby grew tense and formal again. We passed Port Roosevelt and the Valley of Ashes, where I spotted Mrs. Wilson at the garage, her energy apparent even from a distance. Gatsby sped through the streets, and suddenly a policeman pulled us over. "What was that?" I asked. "It's just a card I showed him," Gatsby explained, waving a white card. "I did a favor for the commissioner once, and he sends me a Christmas card every year." We crossed the bridge, and the city spread out before us. It looked stunning, brimming with promise and mystery. I thought to myself, anything can happen now, even Gatsby. At noon, I met Gatsby for lunch in a lively restaurant. He was chatting with a man when I arrived. "Mr. Carroway, this is my friend, Mr. Wolfsheim," Gatsby introduced. Mr. Wolfsheim had a flat nose and large nostrils, and a peculiar charm about him. He launched into a story about how he'd dealt with someone named Catspaw, completely ignoring me. I felt like a bystander at my own lunch. "Highballs?" the waiter asked. Gatsby agreed, and then Mr. Wolfsheim began reminiscing about the old Metropole restaurant. "It's full of memories," he said, "including the night they shot Rosie Rosenthal." I was taken aback. "Did he go?" I asked innocently. "Sure he did," he said, flashing a knowing look. "He went outside and got shot 3 times. The idea that one man could manipulate a major sports event staggered me. "Why isn't he in jail?" I asked, still in disbelief. "They can't catch him," Gatsby said casually. "He's a smart man." I insisted on paying the bill. When the waiter brought my change, I spotted Tom Buchanan across the room. "Come on," I said. "I need to say hello." Tom approached, visibly eager. "Where have you been? Daisy's furious you haven't called." I introduced Gatsby, and as they shook hands, I noticed Gatsby's face twist with embarrassment. "How have you been?" Tom asked me, but when I turned to Gatsby, he had vanished. Later, at the Plaza Hotel, Jordan Baker recounted a story, sitting upright in her chair. "One October day in 1917, she began, "I was walking along, feeling happy with the new shoes I had on." She talked about Daisy, the most popular girl in Louisville, always surrounded by admirers. Daisy had a white roadster and a bustling home, full of officers wanting to spend time with her. One day, she sat with a lieutenant named J. Gatsby, who she didn't see again for years. By the time Gatsby returned, Daisy was engaged to Tom Buchanan, and they married with grand celebrations. But the memory of Gatsby lingered in Daisy's mind. "About 6 weeks ago," Jordan went on, "Daisy heard Gatsby's name again. She asked, 'What Gatsby?' when I mentioned him. Gatsby bought that house just to be near Daisy," Jordan explained, "so he could see her from across the bay." I realized Gatsby's grand dreams were rooted in a deep love for Daisy. He wanted to ask her to tea, and I had the perfect opportunity to help him arrange it. Jordan said, "He just wants to see her in a simple way. He thought you might be offended." As we drove through Central Park, I leaned closer to Jordan, drawn to her confidence and charm. "Daisy ought to have something in her life," she murmured. "Does she want to see Gatsby?" "She shouldn't know about it," I replied, feeling the weight of their connection. We were approaching a bright street, the lights shining down on us. I wrapped my arm around Jordan's shoulder, feeling a spark of excitement about what was to come. Chapter 5. When I got home to West Egg that night, I felt a flutter in my chest. For a moment, I thought my house was on fire. The whole corner of the peninsula was lit up like a Christmas tree. Turning the corner, I realized it was Gatsby's house, glowing from top to bottom. At first, I thought it was another wild party. Maybe they were playing hide-and-go-seek or something. But there was no sound. Just the wind rustling through the trees, flickering the lights on and off like the house was winking at me. As my taxi pulled away, I saw Gatsby walking toward me across his lawn. "Your place looks like the World's Fair," I said, grinning. "Does it?" he replied, his gaze drifting toward the house. "I've been glancing into some of the rooms. Let's go to Coney Island, old sport, in my car." "It's too late," I said, feeling the night closing in. "Well, how about a swim? I haven't used the pool all summer." "I've got to go to bed," I replied, but he looked at me with such eagerness. "I talked with Miss Baker," I said finally. "I'm going to call Daisy tomorrow and invite her over for tea." "Oh, that's fine," he said, brushing it off. "I don't want to put you to any trouble." "What day would suit you?" I asked. "What day would suit you?" he corrected me, his anxiety bubbling up. "I don't want to put you to any trouble, you see." "How about the day after tomorrow?" I suggested. He paused, then said, "I want to get the grass cut." We both looked at the grass. My lawn was ragged, but his was well kept. I suspected he meant my grass. "There's another little thing," he said, hesitating. "Would you rather wait a few days?" I asked. "Oh, it isn't about that," he stumbled over his words. "I thought, why, look here, old sport, you don't make much money, do you?" "Not very much," I replied. This seemed to ease him. "I thought you didn't, if you'll pardon my... You see, I run a little side business, and I thought if you don't make very much... You're selling bonds, aren't you?" "Trying to," I said. "Well, this would interest you. It wouldn't take much of your time, and you might make a nice bit of money." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. "It's a rather confidential thing." Now I realize that under different circumstances, that conversation might have changed my life. But since the offer was clearly awkward, I had to cut him off. "I've got my hands full," I said. "I'm much obliged, but I can't take on any more work." "You wouldn't have to deal with Wolfsheim," he said, clearly misunderstanding my hesitation. He waited a moment, hoping I would chat more, but I was too lost in my own thoughts. Eventually he trudged home, looking defeated. The evening left me feeling lightheaded and happy. I think I walked into a deep sleep as I entered my front door. The next morning I called Daisy to invite her for tea. "Don't bring Tom," I warned her. "What?" she asked, confused. "Don't bring Tom," I repeated. "Who is Tom?" she asked innocently. The day we picked turned out to be pouring rain. At 11 o'clock, a man in a raincoat arrived, dragging a lawnmower. He said he was sent by Gatsby to cut my grass. That reminded me I had forgotten to tell my Finn to come back. So I drove into West Egg Village, searching for her among the soggy alleyways to buy some cups, lemons, and flowers. The flowers turned out to be unnecessary. At 2 o'clock, a greenhouse arrived from Gatsby's, overflowing with plants. An hour later, Gatsby appeared at my door, dressed in a white suit, silver shirt, and gold tie. He looked pale with dark circles under his eyes. "Is everything all right?" he asked immediately. "The grass looks fine, if that's what you mean," I assured him. "What grass?" he asked, seemingly confused. "Oh, the grass in the yard," I clarified. He glanced out the window but looked like he didn't really see anything. "Looks very good," he said vaguely. "One of the papers said the rain would stop about 4. I think it was the Journal. Do you have everything you need for tea?" I took him into the pantry, where he looked a little reproachfully at the Finn. Together we examined the 12 lemon cakes I had bought. "Will they do?" I asked. "Of course, they're fine," he said, but his tone felt hollow. By 3:30, the rain had lightened to a mist. Gatsby stared out the window, looking lost. After a moment, he told me he was going home. "Why's that?" I asked, puzzled. "Nobody's coming to tea. It's too late." He glanced at his watch, as if time was slipping away. "I can't wait all day." "Don't be silly, it's just 2 minutes to 4, I reassured him. He slumped down, looking miserable. Just then, I heard a car turning into my lane. We jumped up, and I felt a bit anxious as I went outside. Under the lilac trees, a large open car rolled up the drive. It stopped, and Daisy popped out, her lavender hat perched sideways, a bright smile lighting up her face. "Is this absolutely where you live, my dearest one?" she asked, with that thrilling ripple in her voice. I had to follow her voice for a moment before I could even speak. A damp strand of hair lay across her cheek as I took her hand to help her from the car. "Are you in love with me?" she whispered in my ear. "Or why did I have to come alone?" "That's the secret of Castle Rackrent," I joked. "Tell your chauffeur to go far away and spend an hour." "Come back in an hour, Ferdy," she instructed. Then, with a serious tone, "His name is Ferdy." We went inside. To my surprise, the living room was empty. "Well, that's funny," I exclaimed. "What's funny?" she asked, turning her head. Just then, there was a dignified knock at the front door. I opened it, and there stood Gatsby, pale as a ghost, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, glaring at me. With his hands still in his coat pockets, he stepped past me into the hall, turning sharply, and disappeared into the living room. I closed the door against the rain, feeling my heart race. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard a muffled murmur and part of a laugh, followed by Daisy's voice. "I certainly am awfully glad to see you again," she said, her voice warm. There was an awkward pause. I walked into the room, trying to diffuse the tension. Gatsby leaned back against the mantelpiece, trying to act casual, but his eyes were locked on Daisy, who sat nervously at the edge of the couch. "We've met before," Gatsby muttered, glancing at me. His lips tried to form a laugh, but failed. Suddenly, the clock behind him tilted dangerously, and he snatched it back into place, his hands trembling. "I'm sorry about the clock," he stammered, embarrassment flooding him. My own face felt hot, and I couldn't think of anything smart to say. "It's an old clock," I managed to say, feeling dumb. I think we all held our breath, expecting the clock to shatter on the floor. "We haven't met for many years," said Daisy, her voice steady. 5 years next November, Gatsby replied automatically, his tone flat. The awkwardness hung in the air, so I suggested they help me make tea in the kitchen. As we scrambled about, Gatsby kept glancing at Daisy with those tense, unhappy eyes. I made an excuse to step away when I could. "Where are you going?" Gatsby asked, alarmed. "I'll be back," I said quickly. "I've got to talk to you before you go," he insisted, following me into the kitchen, closing the door behind us. "Oh, God," he exclaimed, shaking his head. "What's the matter?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "This is a terrible mistake," he said, his voice filled with dread. "You're just embarrassed, that's all," I assured him. "Daisy's embarrassed too." "She's embarrassed?" he repeated in disbelief. "Just as much as you are," I replied. "Don't talk so loud," he hissed. I broke out impatiently. "You're acting like a little boy. Daisy's sitting in there all alone." He raised a hand, silencing me, then looked at me with reproach. Cautiously, he opened the door and returned to the living room. I slipped out the back, just like Gatsby had earlier, and rushed for a big tree, the rain pouring down again. I stared at Gatsby's enormous house, feeling its weight in the silence. It was an impressive place, built by a brewer years before, but it didn't hold any guests. After a while, the rain stopped, and I saw Gatsby's gardener arriving with supplies for dinner. I doubted Gatsby would eat any of it. As I made my way back, I felt the heaviness of their voices in the silence. They must have shared something significant. When I walked back in, I found them at opposite ends of the couch, gazing at each other. Daisy's cheeks were wet with tears, and when I entered, she jumped up, quickly wiping her face before a mirror. But Gatsby had changed completely. He seemed to glow now, filled with a new kind of joy. "Oh, hello, old sport," he said, as if we hadn't seen each other in years. "It's stopped raining," I pointed out. "Has it?" he replied, brightening. "What do you think of that? It's stopped raining." "I'm glad, Jay," Daisy said, her voice filled with warmth. "I want you and Daisy to come over to my house," Gatsby said eagerly. "I'd like to show her around." "You're sure you want me to come?" I asked, a bit hesitant. "Absolutely, old sport," he insisted. Daisy went upstairs to wash her face. Gatsby and I waited on the lawn, and he asked, "My house looks well, doesn't it? See how it catches the light?" I agreed. "It's splendid." "Yes," he said, looking it over. "It took me just 3 years to earn the money that bought it." "I thought you inherited your money," I said, confused. "I did, old sport," he replied, almost automatically. "But I lost most of it in the big panic, the panic of the war." I think he was too distracted to understand what he was saying. When I inquired about his business, he said, "That's my affair," before realizing it wasn't the right answer. "Oh, I've been in several things," he corrected himself. "I was in the drug business and then the oil business, but I'm not in either one now." He looked at me intently. "Have you been considering my proposal from the other night?" Before I could respond, Daisy emerged from the house, her dress gleaming in the sunlight. "That huge place there?" she exclaimed, pointing. "Do you like it?" Gatsby asked, his eyes sparkling. "I love it, but I don't see how you live there all alone." "I keep it filled with interesting people, night and day, celebrated people." Instead of taking the shortcut along the Sound, we walked down the road and entered through the main entrance. Daisy admired the gardens, the scents of flowers filling the air. It felt strange to reach the marble steps without any guests around, with only the sounds of birds in the trees. Inside, as we wandered through lavish rooms, it felt like guests were hiding behind every piece of furniture, waiting silently. As Gatsby closed the door to his library, I thought I heard someone laugh softly. We went upstairs, through bedrooms adorned with silk and flowers, and finally to Gatsby's own apartment, where we sat down to drink a special drink he took from a cupboard. He hadn't stopped looking at Daisy, as if he was reevaluating everything in his house based on her reaction. Sometimes he stared around his possessions in a dazed way, as if none of it was real with her there. He nearly tumbled down the stairs as we admired his gold toilet set. Daisy loved it and ran her fingers over it, while Gatsby shaded his eyes, laughing. "It's the funniest thing, old sport," he said, almost giddy. "I can't, when I try to—" He had passed through 2 states of excitement, and now he was consumed by wonder at having Daisy there. After Gatsby opened 2 large cabinets filled with suits and ties, he threw them onto the table, showcasing his extravagant collection. "Look at these shirts," he said, excitedly tossing them. They were beautiful and colorful, filling the table. Suddenly, Daisy bent her head into the shirts, crying. "They're such beautiful shirts," she sobbed, her voice muffled. "It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before." After the house tour, we were to see the grounds and swimming pool, but it started to rain again. So we stood by the window, looking at the Sound. "If it wasn't for the mist, we could see your home across the bay," Gatsby pointed out. "You always have a green light burning at the end of your dock." Daisy suddenly put her arm through his, but Gatsby seemed lost in thought. The significance of that green light had faded away. It was just a light on a dock now, nowhere near her. I began to wander around the room, examining various items in the low light. I spotted a photo of an older man in sailing gear hanging above Gatsby's desk. "Who's this?" I asked, intrigued. That's Mr. Dan Cody, old sport." The name rang a bell. "He's dead now. He used to be my best friend years ago." There was also a small picture of Gatsby in sailing gear, looking defiant at about 18. "I adore it," Daisy exclaimed. "The pompadour. You never told me you had a pompadour, or a yacht." "Look at this," Gatsby said quickly, showing her clippings about herself. They stood side by side, examining it. Just then, Gatsby's phone rang. He picked it up, sounding distracted. "Yes. Well, I can't talk now. I said a small town. He must know what a small town is." He hung up and Daisy called out from the window, "Come here, quick!" The rain was still falling, but the sky had cleared, revealing beautiful pink clouds above the sea. "Look at that," she whispered. "I'd like to get one of those pink clouds and put you in it and push you around." I tried to leave, but they wouldn't let me go. Maybe my presence made them feel less alone. "I know what we'll do," Gatsby said. "We'll have Klipspringer play the piano." He went out, calling for him, and returned with an embarrassed young man, dressed casually and looking a bit disheveled. "Did we interrupt your exercises?" Daisy asked politely. "I was asleep," Klipspringer admitted, flustered. I was asleep." "Klipspringer plays the piano," Gatsby said, cutting him off. "Don't you, Ewing, old sport?" "I don't play well. I hardly play at all," he replied, looking uncomfortable. "We'll go downstairs," Gatsby said, and flipped a switch, lighting up the house. In the music room, Gatsby turned on a solitary lamp next to the piano. He lit a cigarette for Daisy and sat down with her somewhere dim, far across the room. When Klipspringer played The Love Nest, he turned around, searching for Gatsby in the dark. "I'm all out of practice, you see. I told you I couldn't play. I'm all out of practice." "Don't talk so much, old sport," Gatsby urged him. "Play." Outside, the wind howled, and a faint rumble of thunder rolled across the sound. All the lights in West Egg were coming on now, and the electric trains were rushing home through the rain. It was a time of change, and excitement filled the air. As I went to say goodbye, I noticed Gatsby's bewilderment return. 5 years. There must have been moments that afternoon when Daisy fell short of his dreams, not because of her, but because of the weight of his illusion. He had thrown himself into this dream, decorating it with every bright feather he could find. No amount of fire or freshness can challenge what a man will store in his ghostly heart. As I watched, Gatsby adjusted himself slightly. He took Daisy's hand, and as she whispered something in his ear, he turned toward her, overwhelmed with emotion. That voice held him, warm and vibrant, because it couldn't be overdreamed. They had forgotten me. Daisy glanced up and reached out her hand. Gatsby didn't even acknowledge me anymore. I took one last look at them, lost in their own world, and slipped out of the room and down the marble steps into the rain.